Hi, everybody. So, I'm making a part two to the BeaPlays situation because there's actually a lot more information that has come out. Specifically, DMs from August 25th have been leaked with BeaPlays editor, and they're honestly really telling, in my opinion. On top of this, there's also been a lot of games that have been removing BeaPlays from their badge systems and UGC items that I want to talk about, as well as more allegations that have come out. Now, something I want to start by prefacing is that anytime on the history of the internet that anybody has come out with allegations against somebody who is a public figure, there is always a portion of people who come out with fake allegations and are lying. Okay? Now, there are certainly a handful of people who have talked about their negative experiences with BeaPlays that I do believe are true. That's my opinion. I think that the things these people are saying are true, mainly because of the evidence they can show, screenshots, stuff like that, right? But at the same time, I have seen so many people on Twitter just like sending out a random tweet being like, oh, BeaPlays did this to me, with no proof, no evidence. And obviously, you want to always believe a victim because the nature of these kind of allegations is very sensitive. But at the same time, you have to understand that people have something to gain from lying about BeaPlays, right? I'm not sitting here defending them. What I'm saying is I believe a large portion of the allegations that have come out, specifically the ones with no evidence and are just like a tweet going out from a random burner account, are not true. So I'd really highly encourage you guys to, think critically when you're looking at some of these allegations. People who have evidence and who are talking level-headedly and, are making well-rounded statements and stuff like that. Like, there are several YouTubers that I feel like their situations are authentic, but at the same time, there are definitely people who are just trying to clickbait and get views and get fast followers by making things up. And that's honestly really damaging, not only to BeaPlays, which is an issue, but also to the real victims. People who are actually impacted by this, they're taken less seriously when people are going out and making up false allegations. So please, I would really urge you, if you don't have a direct experience with BeaPlays, don't post a video being like, she did this to me, or they did this to me, or whatever, because, it takes away from people who had genuine experiences with this person, and it just kind of discredits their, what's the word for it? Like their authenticity when there's like 1,000 people saying this, and this, and they're kind of just regurgitating what real victims have said. So I just wanted to put that out there. And if you do have a genuine concern that is serious in nature, you're making allegations that are very serious in nature, I would highly encourage you to go and talk to local law enforcement. I know it can be hard, but that's the way these situations should be handled when they're this severe. Law enforcement is the place that you need to go to discuss that, because unfortunately people online will take things out of context, they'll skew it, they'll twist it. It's just really important to handle these sensitive situations with the proper channels. Anyways, so with all of that out of the way, the first thing I want to start by saying was I did see that Royal High actually removed BeaPlays badge, and Dressed Impress also removed their UGC doll from the game and replaced it with a Lana doll earlier today. Now, to me, this doesn't necessarily affirm that any of the accusations are 100% true, but it tells me that these games have received information or proof or evidence of certain claims, and that was enough for them to remove their association with BeaPlays. Like I discussed in my last video, although bad press can be good for view count and for monetization, for a game and a game's image, it's really not good. So obviously, if there's really severe allegations against someone who is an image or like a representative of your game, you're not going to want to be associated with them. That being said, I would hope these games did their due diligence and took away these badges and items due to information and evidence they received from credible sources. But just putting that out there, BeaPlays badge from Royal High has been taken away, as well as the doll in Dress to Impress, and it's been replaced. Now, getting on to the more, I would say, sensitive subject in this video, which this whole video is sensitive in nature, obviously, but basically, BeaPlays editor of 3 years put out a exposed document on Canva, which honestly I was a little bit surprised they didn't use Google Docs because I'm not really accustomed to Canva. I don't really know how it works, but anyways, they put out this exposed doc onto Canva, which is like a digital editing platform basically. And the document, personally, in my opinion, I think some things are worded very harshly. And I do understand that English is not this individual's first language, so I think it's important to keep that in mind. Some of their wording was very aggressive and I thought was kind of mean, but I understand, English isn't their first language, so just being mindful of that. But basically, they've been editing for BeaPlays, to my understanding, for the last 3 years, and they've done a variety of content. Now, I guess at some point they were posting the videos for BeaPlays and doing stuff like that, which I think, just a side note, it's kind of bizarre. Like, typically when you hire an editor, their job is just to hire, do editing, and then you as a YouTuber would post your own videos. But I just thought that was kind of interesting, because I've never really heard of somebody doing that unless it's like a massive channel where they have like multiple departments of people working on every video. But with that in mind, this editor posted just kind of some background context of how they met and how they did editing for other YouTubers before that. And then they actually leaked screenshots of a conversation they had directly with BeaPlays on August 25th, 2025. So that's 5 days ago at the time of recording this video, which was a day after the whole Lady Gaga thing totally hit the fan and stuff was blowing up, right? Now, I have to say, I'm not defending BeaPlays, but I can really, I don't want to use the word empathize, but I think some of the comments that they made, specifically in this conversation with their editor, were actually pretty mature. Now, again, I'm not saying that BeaPlays is innocent. I'm not claiming that, a bunch of the allegations aren't true. But it kind of, these conversations I felt gave us some insight into what's going on with them. Particularly, they discussed that the reason they haven't spoken out is because they are currently in contact with a lawyer, which, in my opinion, that is the best thing you can do in this situation. At the end of the day, whether you're innocent or guilty, with a situation where there's allegations as serious as this, you definitely need to be consulting the proper channels, either with the police or with a lawyer, to discuss stuff such as defamation, lies, slander, stuff like that, right? Because at the end of the day, if things are being made up about you, these are life-ruining allegations and they need to be handled accordingly, right? So BeaPlays discussed with their editor that they were seeking legal counsel and just kind of trying to collect their thoughts, which I think is a really great step from what they did previously, which was putting out that apology in the Dress to Impress server. Now, I found out after posting my video, apparently the apology that was very strongly worded was actually real. So I was honestly really shocked by that. But I do think it's a big step that, compared to how they were handling it 5 days ago, they've now taken a step back. They're like, okay, I need to take a moment, I need to collect my thoughts, and then come out with a well-rounded, honest statement. And I really hope that once they have a chance to discuss with their legal counsel and kind of get all of their statements kind of into a cohesive cohesive thing to tell their audience, I just hope that it's more appropriate and professional than their previous apology. Now, with that in mind, there was a lot in this DM exchange, and honestly, I don't fully understand why the editor was saying they were betrayed. I guess maybe what they meant was they felt betrayed because they had heard all these allegations about BeaPlays, I guess is what they meant. But I didn't see any direct betrayal. I'm not quite sure what happened there. But based on these messages, it seems like there was apparently previous allegations when B worked at a school or something like that. Again, we're only seeing a tiny snippet of these messages, so we don't have the full scope of the conversation, which I think is a constant issue in this whole situation, is that we keep just seeing tiny snippets of things as opposed to the whole picture, which I think is why so many people are just taking one narrative and running with it. Because obviously it's difficult to make a well-rounded statement about a situation unless you know everything to be true and everything, you have the whole accurate picture, which I think is important. And that's why in my previous video I didn't put any screenshots up or confirm or deny anything that I wasn't 100% sure was correct, because again, spreading false information is very damaging, especially when your career revolves around the internet, right? Now, in this exchange, B did go on to say that they don't think they'll continue on YouTube after this, which, if these allegations aren't true, if the really serious ones aren't true, I think is really unfortunate, right? Because at the end of the day, some of the allegations, at least the ones I've seen with evidence of, bullying or kind of just the mentality of ganging up on somebody because they criticized you, I think that's inappropriate. But I think that's something you can learn from and, become a better person from and apologize and make amends and grow from, right? But I don't know how to word this, but if that is the only allegation that is true, I don't think that warrants you having to leave the internet. But if it is true, a lot of the other more serious allegations, specifically with the one youth who moved to the UK, and kind of there's stuff going around with that, which I find very difficult to find the source of those allegations. Like, I know there's a name for the person, but there's just so many pages that I found on Twitter just like pretending to be them and commenting things, so I'm not even sure where to look. I'm really confused. But definitely, if that is true, I think that's a valid reason to leave the internet, because in these exchanges with their editor, it's clear that they understand that a large portion of their viewer base is children, right? And I'm sure, as anybody knows who uses YouTube, you can go into your YouTube studio and look at your demographics, see which country is watching your videos the most. You can see what age ranges, genders, what other stuff they're looking at. Like, there's actually a lot you can see about your subscribers. So I'm sure B was aware that a large portion of their subscribers were kids, and that is further supported by the fact that they wanted to create more memey and fast-paced videos, because that is a specific content style that appeals specifically to kids, right? It's kind of like the brain rot mentality of like kids having short attention spans. So that to me reinforces that they understand that their player base is kids, which goes on to put a further kind of negative taste in my mouth that they allegedly had kind of dogpiled on this smaller creator a couple years ago. Now, the creator that I'm talking about is, I don't remember their exact YouTube name. It was like Bean something, I think. But I'll put their YouTube channel on the screen. But, you know, they've made a number of videos, which I'm not going to get into all the allegations, but one in particular, they kind of talked about how they had criticized B previously a couple years ago when they said a couple years ago, so I guess they say they're like 15, 16 now, so they must have been like 13, 14? I'm not quite sure about the timeline. Regardless, they were a minor because they're still currently a minor. And I guess they had criticized B and they didn't like that, and so then B made a video about it, and that in turn sent a bunch of hate to this creator's page, which at the time they didn't have like 165,000 subscribers. They actually had a very small channel, and they gained subscribers from the situation. Now, that's a whole other thing I'm going to discuss. Is just, it seems like there's a history and a repeat history of just not recognizing that the people you're conversing with online are children. Now, regardless of the accusations, right? When you are an influencer and you're in a position of power, especially when you're an adult, right? You have to be aware that the people you're conversating with are children, which means that their frontal lobe is not fully developed, which I'm not saying that makes you stupid, but what I am saying is that maybe hinders your ability to make rational decisions or to understand the full scope or consequences of your actions. But with that being said, that doesn't warrant the same response as if an adult was saying something about you, right? At the end of the day, if an adult's saying something about you and it's really negative and it's really harmful, you know, you address that with them in an adult way. But when it's a child, I feel like sending your massive follower base after them is really in just poor taste, right? Because as an influencer, at the end of the day, yes, you want to defend yourself, but you understand by just listening to a video that it is a child, and you understand that by having a massive follower base, regardless if you tell people, hey guys, don't like go and attack this person, if you tell somebody or your loyal fans that somebody's being mean to you, because they have this parasocial relationship with you, they're gonna want to go and attack that person and be like, hey, don't talk about my favorite influencer like this, you know? And so, unfortunately, I feel like as an adult, B probably knew that by making that video and by talking about this other creator who criticized them, that creator would be attacked. And unfortunately, I feel like that's a method that a lot of large influencers use to silence people who criticize them, is by sending a hate mob after them. And that's something I want to be really clear about in my videos. I'm not a large creator, obviously. I just started my channel, but my intention with making a video is never to just dogpile somebody, right? Because I think it's so easy to just like villainize somebody and paint them as a total villain. And my intention with these videos is to create a more well-rounded perspective where I want to highlight things that have happened and claims that have been made, but also kind of play devil's advocate in the sense that I wholeheartedly believe that some of the accusations against BeaPlays are made up. I really do, because people have a lot to gain from lying about this person, and obviously any accusations I've talked about in this video I believe are true, but there's random accusations of people saying like, oh, BeaPlays stole my car, or some random stuff like that. Like, obviously that's not true, you know, and people are just putting BeaPlays in their Twitter posts because it's like a hot keyword right now. I just think that is so damaging. And you know, as people on the internet, it's our responsibility to be mindful that everybody that you talk about is a real person. And I think the conversations that were had between the editor and BeaPlays really shine light into BeaPlays' mental state. And I'm not saying their mental state is an excuse to not hold them accountable, but I thought that this conversation kind of showed some remorse in that they didn't say that all the allegations were false. That was the main thing, that they said not all the allegations are true, right? Which insinuates that some of them are false and some of them are true, right? We just don't know which ones yet. And I think it's important to be mindful that people have stuff to gain from lying about this person. It's not just take every single thing that you hear and run with it, right? Because imagine if that was you, right? And someone said, oh, this person bullied me, or this person did this. And then you have 500 other people being like, they did this to me too. And you have never met these people in your entire life, right? So I just think, in order for people to be taken seriously and for the real victims in this potential situation to be heard and to be valued and to be understood, you have to be very mindful of their experiences and just don't take this as an opportunity to make it about yourself, right? If you have a genuine experience, feel free to share it. If it's a very serious experience, please share it with the police. But going online and lying about stuff and taking things out of context is just so bizarre. I don't know why people do that. Anyways, this video was kind of just all over the place, but long story short, to make a very, very, very long story short, the developments from what I've seen has just been that BeaPlays has been removed from certain games, which to me reinforces the notion that these games recognize that there is a genuine issue that has occurred, and there's obviously certain accusations that have been substantiated, which is why they were removed from these games, because obviously random games wouldn't just remove an influencer because someone's saying something, right? There has to be valid evidence for them to do that. And as well as the messages with the editor being leaked. Now, I discussed the messages, but I honestly feel like some of these messages just didn't need to be put out there. I feel like some of them were very vulnerable. And I'm not defending BeaPlays and saying they're a victim or anything like that, but I think the messages maybe could have been selectively added a little bit more respectfully, because some of the conversations I feel like open this editor up for legal action, right? Like you're having a conversation about how BeaPlays is getting a lawyer and then you leak those conversations. I feel like that's kind of, I don't know. Honestly, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know enough about the legalities of this, but I would just urge everyone in this situation, please be mindful of what you're repeating. Please be mindful of what you're commenting. Please be mindful of the stuff that you're reposting, because there are legitimate people who have been impacted by the situation. And then there are also clout goblins who are just trying to get attention from this and monetization and views and clicks. And I just think it's very important to be mindful and to be aware that not everything you see on Twitter specifically is true about this person, and to do your due diligence, do some research, and just fact check things that you're seeing before you repeat them. Anyways, with all that in mind, I am hopeful that we will hear from BeaPlays or from their legal counsel within the next couple days, because I would honestly like to see a statement. I'm not a victim or anything like that. I've never had an experience with BeaPlays. I don't know BeaPlays. I don't know them personally, but I think it would definitely be helpful to have a statement from them, maybe just addressing blatantly which allegations are completely false, so that you can rule them out right away, and then kind of just like work through the stuff that is allegedly correct or allegedly true, right? So I will be looking for that. I know it's been about 6 days at the time of recording this video that these whole allegations surfaced. So I would assume within 7 to 10 days, maybe after the weekend, stuff might come out. But I'm not fully sure. Of course, when you're discussing with a lawyer, you have to be very mindful. And I keep saying mindful in this video. I guess that's my favorite word now. But you have to spend a lot of time to make sure everything you're saying is accurate, because you only have one shot at a statement for this sort of issue and you don't want to mess it up. So I can appreciate that they're taking the time to hopefully properly format it and gather evidence and information. And I just hope that anybody who has been impacted by the situation legitimately gets justice for anything that they endured. But at the same time, anybody who's making things up is also held accountable, because it's not fair to damage somebody's reputation over false allegations because you want clicks and views. Anyways, that's all I had to say in this video. Thank you to everybody who said they liked my last video. I appreciate that. That was very nice. I'm still learning how to do this. I just don't really know how to use all this software, which you might see my ears glitch like my last video. I was trying to be happy. My ears kept going and I thought it looked kind of scary. But for those of you that were wondering, this is the Sukiya, I think is how you say it. The customizable model. It's about $200, but I just bought it off VGen and then customized it and edited some of the textures. So Anyways, I hope you guys found this video informative, and I would encourage you guys to do your due diligence and research before just repeating random things. And to those who are impacted by the situation, I hope you're doing okay. Anyways, have a good day, guys. Bye-bye.